Good afternoon, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. Thank you so much for joining as we are about to discuss a very important topical matter. And this afternoon or this evening, we are going to talk about the whole drama that is going on in Jamaica on the plantation as usual, because we are indeed a plantation, right? And the plantation is real and it is a literal plantation. Jamaica is not a symbolic or metaphorical plantation. It is, in fact, it is a de facto plantation and is something that we should be working towards eliminating and becoming free. But instead, we are caught up in the frivolous and the superficial and the artificial discussions that are going on down there, because as we do know, the financial elites in Jamaica, the economic elites, love that because at the end of the day, they will have won the battle and Jamaicans will still be left enslaved mentally, economically, politically, and in every facet of their life, of their existence, right there on that grand plantation called Jamaica. Something that we have to come to grips with. Okay, let's begin. We know that, the facts now that Mark Golding is indeed, he has dual citizenship, right? That he is a citizen of Britain rather, and he is also a citizen of Jamaica. Well, the drama now down there is that he's not also a citizen of Jamaica because they did check at the Jamaica registrar and they have found that his birth was not officially registered. I don't know whether that is true. If it has been verified, because we know that everything that is being played in Jamaica right now has to do with politics, right? It is not even politics, it is politics, right? So that is what is happening there. So we do not know what is true from what is not true, what is real from what is unreal. The fact of the matter is that the situation down there is dire and our politicians are behaving like children, right? And they are not interested in elevating the conversation because it is not going to be going well for them, all right? Because at the end of the day, they do not want the light on the corruption and also the level of disorder, the level of lawlessness that reigns supreme in Jamaica. Now, let's look at the whole Mark Golding situation, right? They're reporting now that he has acknowledged that he does have dual citizenship. And that to me is something interesting. Now, he has argued his point that according to the Jamaican constitution, that he's allowed to be there, right? I am not any constitutional expert. And one of the things about the whole arguments down there, you should have these constitutional experts like the Stephen Vassianis and others down there to sort of unveil what's going on there and interpret in layman terms for the people. But he is silent on the matter. I have not heard him say anything about what is happening, but he should be able to say something, and the other constitutional experts in Jamaica should weigh in on the matter and explain to Jamaicans what this matter of dual citizenship is all about and the implications, and if the Constitution permits it or if it does not permit that sort of arrangement. Now, we know that Mark Golding has been in Parliament for years now, right? I can't really count the number of years. I don't remember the number of years that he has been in Parliament. This discussion of dual citizenship has been in the Jamaican consciousness from at least 2007 when Golding came into power. That is Bruce Golding, former Prime Minister of Jamaica, when some of the then members of Parliament in his regime, in his administration, were being challenged in the courts for their being also dual citizens of Jamaica and other countries. And, it was a long battle fought in the court. I can't remember how, I think some of them had to renounce. I think that's what happened. Some of them had to renounce their citizenship. But let me ask you a question, Jamaicans. We know that it is good when you can be faithful and you can be loyal to the country that you are serving in, right? And the people to whom you are serving, right? We know that that is the standard and that should be the standard. But let us look at, what's his name? Dr. Peter Phillips. Dr. Peter Phillips who is a bona fide Jamaican citizen and also a bona fide Jamaican politician. He was a politician extraordinaire, whatever you want to say about him, but he did serve in parliament for many years, and he was both president and leader of the People's National Party. Now, during the Dudas saga, the Christopher Dudas saga, we know that, well, according to the allegations, according to the cables, right, that were disclosed by WikiLeaks, we understood that Dr. Peter Phillips was involved in, betraying Jamaican trust in terms of, leaking information to the U.S. Embassy about Jamaican private matters. Now, should we be talking about dual citizenship in terms of people just having a title and saying, they have a passport and say that they're British or they're Canadians or they're Americans, where we have a huge diaspora in these countries, in the United States, in Canada, and also in the UK? Or should we be more concerned about their loyalty in terms of what they have done so far? Are they patriotic, right? Are they doing things in the interest of building a well-constructed and sound Jamaica? Or should we just be concerned if they have two passports? I mean, to me, again, it is the yin and the yang, and also the fact that Jamaicans like to talk about superficial stuff. They like to concentrate and to emphasize that which is superficial, that which is not of substance, right? And we've got to start discussing substantive issues. Right now, we see that our country is running amok, right? The economy is in tatters. We do not know where we stand economically. All we're hearing are numbers coming out of these multilateral neoliberal institutions, right? And these are often not correct numbers. They often, as you should know by now, manipulate these numbers, right? And they give you this false hope. And we've been hearing these numbers being manipulated for years. And even though they tell us about what the IMF tells us and what the IDB says and all of these major institutions, at the end of the day, we still remain at the same place economically or worse, right? So why don't we talk about the economy? Why don't we talk about corruption, for example? Let us look, for example, at what happened at the SSL, right? And the fact that that matter has also not yet been resolved, right? We don't know who stole all that money, and we don't know who are the connections or what are the connections to that theft, right? That large-scale theft, right? Nothing has become of that. It was just a mere distraction, and people chatted and they shouted and they screamed, and at the end of the day, nothing became of it, right? It was just another 9-day wonder, as Jamaicans are, like to practice and like not to engage, not to be engaged, as it were, in detailed assessment of corruption. Because at the end of the day, we know that the economic elites do not want these matters to be divulged to the public because they will be held responsible and accountable. Another thing, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that as a people also, right, when we look at the economic disaster in Jamaica, right, we have not yet delved into or done a deep dive into these politicians and their, what we call them now, their tax havens, right, where they are lodging their money. That should also be of major concern if you are applying to be the ultimate leader of the country, be they the prime minister or the oppositional leader, all right, or any sitting member of parliament. Because if you have most of your investment, your economic investment, say in St. Lucia, all right, or any of the tax havens, it means that your loyalty is not with Jamaica, right? Because you're paying taxes there, you're avoiding paying taxes in Jamaica, right? We do not know where, for example, Mark Golding, where Andrew Holness, and a lot of others are lodging their monies. Shouldn't the journalists in Jamaica be trying to unveil these things to us, these truths to us, these facts to us, so that we'll be able to see who are loyal and who might not be loyal for the post of the prime ministership and the leader of the opposition? right? Instead, again, we are more emphasizing somebody's passport and, or he has two passports. And a lot of times it's because of the person, when we look at these things, it's because of bad mind. And also it's politics, right? They're playing politics now because Andrew Holness desires to win the election and he's trying to unseat Mark Golding. Now, I am not a member of the PNP nor the GLP. I think both of them are controlled by the same people, and I don't think they are, they have represented very well the interest of Jamaicans. I do not believe so. And I think that I've had, enough evidence after 60, how many years now? 62 years, all right, going 63 years of independence. I think that Jamaicans should have enough evidence that these two political parties are inept and that they have not really represented the interest of the Jamaican citizens, right? But I just wanted to say that because sometimes when you try to put a balance, to pose a balance, to create a balance in the discussion, people tend to say that you are, wow, he's a PNP and he's taking up for, the PNP, right? I'm not defending Mark Golding because I think that we don't know, where this guy has gotten his millions from, right? We know that he's a part of the Jamaican elite class, right? But these guys are making millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars every year. And in a very poor country, right? In a very poor country, and yet still they are representing, or they pretend to be representing Jamaicans. The same thing with Andrew Holness, right? Andrew Holness came from a lower class, right? The lowest ebb of society, and the lowest strata, I should say, of society, stratum. But the fact of the matter is that he has not really disclosed to us how he has been able to have gathered so much wealth through the years, and very brief years too. He has still not been able to do so. Has he disclosed his taxes and his financial documents, right? Has he done that yet? Why are we now, creating this lots of conflict and drama over Mark Golding and his situation? Because as we know that his father was British, right? So normally, likely, he's going to have some British attachment, right? Because that represents a side of his family, right? This is not just like a naturalized citizenship. This was, based on his father's descent, right? And his father's legacy to him. And how many of us would not like to keep our parents' legacy to us? We can't change who he is. That is essentially who he is. And Jamaica ought to be a diverse country. We had British influence and still, and we still do, right, have that British influence. We have other influences there. My argument is that if we have a rule and it's a part of the Constitution, then stick to it, right? Stick to the rule. Do not allow politics to triumph, right? Or to trump, I should say, over the law, what the law says. The Constitution should be primordial, right? It should be the supreme law of the land, right? And if the Constitution says that these politicians should not be dual citizens, then everybody should follow suit. We did have that conversation, as I said, in 2007. Why didn't we change and why didn't we clarify the Constitution then? And before these people even go into office, they should be investigated, right? A proper investigation as regards their citizenship should be done and should be carried out. And then you determine whether or not they qualify or they are disqualified for the position, right? Why wait until they are already leaders and they are making statements and it's coming up to election to create this sort of confusion when we need to address other important matters, right? When we look also at the level of crime and violence in Jamaica, this morning we woke up to a very, very sad and disheartening story that came from the Jamaican Gleaner. And the title is Jamaican NBA Prospect Found Dead Months Before Draft, right? And look at this young man, right? Let me just share my screen with you. Look at the young man. They say he's a what? 6 feet, 9 inches tall young man with a lot of prospect, right? And future had he been alive, but now he is dead, right? So I think one of the gravest threats to our freedom right now in Jamaica is crime and violence, right? Because it is taking a lot of lives unnecessarily from that island of Marcus Messiah Garvey. Now, we have here the professional basketball dreams and aspirations of former national under-17 representative, 24-year-old Marco Mish Downer, who had reportedly been eligible for the 2024 NBA draft next month, will not be realized after he was found dead in Port Moore, St. Catherine on Saturday, right? So he's now dead, right? And look at this, Downer, a former Jamaica College and Calabar basketball standout, who was also a United States College scholarship recipient, was last seen alive on Thursday, right? And these are the news that we are frequently seeing coming out of Jamaica, right? News of gruesome murder, right? Gruesome murder of children. And we do know that that is something that is not good for our economy, right? It's just not good. It's not good for our social standing as a society. And we've got to look into these matters and stop talking about dual citizenship. Because at the end of the day, we do know that it does not matter if you are a bona fide Jamaican citizen, because at the end of the day, you still can betray your country, as we saw, allegedly what Dr. Peter Phillips seemed to have done during the Christopher Dust saga. We have to learn our lessons from history. It's just not about having dual citizenship or two passports or not, but it's about working and developing, implementing policies that will help to build that place, to build the island called Jamaica, and that can prosper our citizens, right? And that also implement economic policies that will help to, distribute the wealth that is in Jamaica, right? Because the society is too divisive, right? We see that there is a stark difference between the haves and the have-nots. And perhaps one of these days, I ought to bring back the speech made by Mr. Siaga of the haves and the have-nots. That was made from 1959. I think that was the time that he presented that speech. He made that speech in the Jamaican Parliament. And to this day, things have not improved that much, right? We're still living on that grand plantation, right? A plantation that the British left, the order that they left. That is something that we should be trying to shake up now. Michael Manley tried to do it. He tried to change that order that the British left, and he was punished for doing so, right? That is what they should be doing now, that we should be talking about the order that the British left after they gave us Jamaica, right? After they left Jamaica, because they left an order there that is still there, right? They left an order there that is still there. I also want to ask our Jamaicans who are talking about Republican status, and they're so much, enamored by the prospects of becoming a Republican, all the nonsense coming out of Jamaica. In 2010, when we also had the Christopher Dust saga and debacle, where was the then Queen of England? Why couldn't we have petitioned her to speak to the Americans and to see how the British could have sort of calmed down the Americans and prevented the CIA from going to Jamaica and killing our people? Because after all, she was the what? The symbolic then, the then symbolic head of state. In 2010, Queen Elizabeth II was the symbolic head of state of Jamaica. So if we think that they still played a role, or they are still playing a role in Jamaica in terms of our politics, I think they do in terms of our economics, but not in terms of our politics. Why couldn't we have petitioned her to have spoken to then President Obama to see what could have been done to have averted the killing of so many of our people? Right? We do know that when the British were there physically, when their presence, where they were there before they turned us over and we obtained partial, I should say, independence, right? That perhaps the United States could not have done that if before 2000, before 1962, the United States would not have been able to just go down there with the CIA and kill the people in Kingston, right? Because at the time, we were still a dependent of the British Empire. We were still a colony. We were a former colony of the empire. But the fact of the matter, if you think that the British are still, we're still, tied to them in politically, as because we want to become this grand republic, we want to become a republic, and we think that being a republic is going to make us fully free, right? And that is what the Prime Minister suggested this morning on a program aired on CVM with Yendi and Dennis. I heard him this morning saying that, it's time for us to become fully free. Fully free, you're right. And we are economically dependent, right, on many of these nations, particularly the United States of America, right? The United States is the reigning superpower, and it is that power that controls us. I was actually reading an article also some weeks ago about, the whole relationship that the British have with the United States, and the fact the authors, were making the point that Britain is controlled by the United States. It's after World War II, it has become just another de facto colony. It's almost like history is repeating itself, because the United States was a former colony of the British Empire, but after World War II, after they had been defeated, the British World War I and World War II, the empire had received a lot of blows, right? And I did tell you that from the Haitian Revolution in 1791 through to 1803, that the British also, were thoroughly weakened by that revolution, because they were fighting to have gotten that island, because they had lost the United States 13 colonies in 1776, right? So they wanted another prosperous colony, and Haiti was. Saint-Domingue was a very prosperous colony, and they sought it, and, of course, they lost that battle, and they were severely weakened, right? And that is why the British, they sort of were seeking to abolish slavery by 1807, abolish the trade, because they realized that they were part of this trade. They were now dying, so they wanted to pretend as if they were the moral, leaders of the abolition. Even though we had some abolitionists in the British Parliament, but the British were not as sincere. The political leaders, the political economic leaders, were not sincere in terms of ending that system, because they had benefited largely from it. But now, when they saw that Haiti had the revolution and it was successful, and that they were spreading freedom in countries, around Latin America and the Caribbean, then the British had to seriously consider ending that institution, right? That peculiar institutions, as the Americans would call it. But let's go back to basics, right? We need to understand that at this juncture of our history, the whole discussion and the whole drama, the whole conflict involving Mark Golding about his dual citizenship is not going to go anywhere. And if Mark Golding should resign from office tomorrow, the Jamaican people are not going to win. Right? You're not going to win, because the fact of the matter is that somebody else has come, the local elites will put in somebody else, and the agenda continues, right? Because it's not about you, right? It's about them. And them means the elites. And that is something that you've got to understand. The agenda is not about you, the people, right? It's about the global and local elites and their wanting to capture as much as possible the power, to consolidate, a better word, the power in that country and in the world at large, right? So stop talking about this dual citizenship now, because at the end of the day, they can be bona fide Jamaicans in the sense that they might not have two passports, but at the end of the day, right, if by heart they are having they're participating in tax havens, and they're investing millions of dollars in other countries and paying taxes in these countries, building up these countries' infrastructure, while they leave our infrastructure in Jamaica decaying, then what's the difference? What is the difference? In fact, it's worse. if somebody can have two passports or dual citizenship and they are, because they're working there, they're willing and they have the heart to develop Jamaican people and not, invest huge sums of money in tax havens, it would be better to have a person as your prime minister or a member of parliament than to have someone who says that he or she is Jamaican and has no other allegiance to any other power. So they say, because if they have economic investments in other countries, they're not loyal to Jamaica, even though he or she, as I'm saying, might only have um, Jamaican citizenship, right? This is something we have to be discussing. And we have to talk about the economy. Again, the economy is stupid. I am sure, what's his name? Dr. Nigel Clark is very happy with what is happening in Jamaica right now, because at least he doesn't have to be responsible for the policies, the economic policies that he probably is implementing right now as we speak, right? He does not have to be in any way held responsible or accountable, because we can have the circus in Jamaica continues, right? The circus in Jamaica continues, because Jamaica is also, apart from being a plantation, it is a circus. Nobody takes us seriously because we do not take ourselves seriously. Nobody can look in our parliament or what happens in politics in Jamaica and take us seriously. Even in our tourism sector, right? We're hearing that 60% of the profit do not remain in Jamaica. That most of the food, the things that are served on the plates in these hotels, only 10% or less come from Jamaican farmers, right? Or Jamaican producers. Let's call them that, because it could come from the arts and the food, whatever, right? Only 10%, right? It means, therefore, that very little remains in Jamaica. That is the plantation model. That is the plantation model. Now, I hear Raticon this today on the program that I was listening to, and he said something rather bizarre, that well, right now, as I'm seeing it, somebody can clarify, the Jamaican diaspora in the United States is actually divided, and they are not united right now, because Raticon has a section, and the other diaspora members, they belong them, they have their organization, right? As it were. I do not know what's happening there in terms of that. But I do know that the organization that Ratigan and his partners control, they are suggesting that in December, it could be November too, but he said December. What if the Jamaican diaspora decide not to send any money to Jamaica? And the host of the program asked him, but if they decide to do that, and you have grandma who might be dying and she might need some medication or some food to sustain life, and you know what Ratigan said? He said, well, sometimes we have to just, suffer, a little to make things better, right? Now, who do you think you are fooling, Ratigan? Right? And how do you think that is going to help the problem? By denying diaspora members of the right to send their families money. What if I'm saying that medication is going to determine whether the person will lives or not? Right? We can't do that, right? We can't punish, right? Cut off what they say, cut off your nose to punish your face, right? We can't do that, right? Jamaicans can't afford that to happen. There has to be other ways of sending the government a message, but it can't be that you have to punish the citizens for what their governments are doing or are not doing, right? It's very important that we understand that. Very important that we begin to understand these issues, that the issues are what we should be debating. And the whole matter of dual citizenship is not a substantive issue that should be debated at this juncture of the history, right? Even the Republican status is something that is also not going to help us, right? It's not going to help us to become a republic here or there, right? A real republic, yes, we would want, but at this juncture of the history, we're not going to get a real republic, right? Because we do not even own the land called Jamaica. So what we should be working on now is try to see how we can reclaim Jamaica right? And we can say that this is the land of our birth and we own this land. But if we don't own the land, then we're not free. And no matter if we want to call ourselves democracy, if we want to call ourselves republic, right? It just does not matter, right? It just does not matter because we're not free. And the main signal of freedom is economic freedom, right? It's economic freedom. If we can be controlled economically, then we can also be controlled politically, okay, religiously, right? And all facets of our lives. And that is why, as I said to you, well, he was not Dr., but Marcus Mosiah Garvey was trying very hard, right, to bring about economic independence. He knew that Jamaica was a former colony, but he was not there ready to extricate us from the British monarchy in his time, right? He understood, right? But he understood that when if we had become economically independent and we had become educated, then that would have been many Jamaicans would want. Naturally they would want their Republican status. They would want to extricate themselves from the British monarchy. But neither have we become economically independent, nor have we become or have we been transformed into an educated society, right? Even though the Barbadian Republican status is also phony and it's a for Republican state, but at least we can say that they did develop their economy and that they also educated, for the most part, their populace, right? But Jamaica did neither of the two, right? We decided that we should have maintained our people in um in slavery, in bondage, right? On the plantation. We're still on the plantation. That is why we can be having discussions like whether Mark Goldman should leave or he should not be leaving, right? At the end of the day, he is not going to lose. Mark Goldman is not going to be the loser, even if he should diminish office tomorrow. He is a part of the elites, right? He has a lot of money, right? He has dual citizenship. He can go anywhere he wants to go, right? He has that sort of economic power, right? And he also has the wherewithal and the connections to do whatever he wants to do. The Jamaican people are the ones who are going to be left in Jamaica with the high rates of crime and violence, catastrophic economic infrastructure, right? And they're the ones who are suffering. And at this point, I do not see where we're having any substantive discussions on the tractable problems that bedevil Jamaica. None whatsoever. Everything that is happening down there right now is just what children, would debate about and have puerile discussions on, right? It's time for us to wake up. It's time for us to smell the coffee. It's time for us to understand that the world is moving rapidly, right? The world is moving rapidly and we are just crawling. And that is why we are going to be left behind. We are already behind, but we will, just like Haiti, be left behind, and rivers of tears will continue to flow in that land of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Thank you so much for joining. Hope that you will join me in another session when I upload another video. Please like, share, and subscribe. It's time for you now to like the videos up so that the videos can be shared on the platform and can be diffused to as many people as possible. All the best to you. Adios. Ciao.